We are the music makers. We are the dreamers of dreams, wandering by lone sea breakers and sitting by desolate streams. World losers and world forsakers, on whom the pale moon beams. Yet, we are the movers and shakers of the world forever, it seems. My name is Helen Gannon, and now I'm going to tell you the story of how I ended up in St. Louis, Missouri, and I am now a proud American citizen. My story begins way back in Ireland, in Limerick City, where I was born. I was born at home and by a midwife, which I am myself today, and I have had a wonderful childhood and a wonderful life, and I now have a wonderful life in America, a created life, if you like. So I was born in 1941, and I have one sister who is 11 months older than I am, and I have two brothers, one of them which is 10 years younger than I am. So we were a spread out family. My childhood was very simple. We lived in a tiny house in Limerick City. And Limerick City is a town of 50,000 people, which at one time was the capital of Ireland, but now Dublin is the capital of Ireland. So our house was a rented house. There was my mother, my father, my grandmother, and my siblings. All lived in a 2-bedroom house. And I'm telling you this because of the simplicity that I now remember and loved so much. So I had to share a very tiny bed with my sister in Limerick, and she was a very studious kind of sister, and she was a quiet sister. I was quite the opposite. And so we didn't really get along in the bed very well, but it's part of the story because now, if I had that life over again, I look back on it with happiness and joy.
When I was a child, we lived in a house. There was 4 children in the family, 2 girls and 2 boys, my mother and father and my grandmother. We had 3 bedrooms, 2 bedrooms upstairs, and we had 1 small one downstairs, which I shared with Ellen. Wasn't very easy. She'd keep me awake all night, practicing her steps. My mother sent the 2 of us to dancing. She was good at it. I was neither use nor ornament. So she went on, loved it, was in all the shows. At school, she was always getting into trouble, and they'd always complain to me about it. Helen was very flowery and loved attention, and always was popular with everybody.
Each of us got one extracurricular activity. We had a piano. My sister got the piano lessons, and Helen got the dancing lessons. And so I was very happy to get Irish dancing as a child. And my teacher was a Mrs. Laguerre, who was a very strict teacher, but she gave me my love of Irish dancing. And it was a big sacrifice too for my parents to put out the money for those extracurricular activities. And in school in Ireland, I also want to tell you that every child got a little bit of dancing, and we got singing, and we got music. So those are the qualities that I find today in my life in America as very important in a child's life. I find that the arts is what makes the person whole. So I'm very excited about Comhaltas Ceoltóirí Éireann, which became the most important part of my life to become happy in North America. I lived around the corner from school, literally. We could leave our house and we'd be at school in 2 minutes. So that was wonderful. However, I I wasn't a great student. And by the time I came to high school, my mother decided that I wouldn't do well in high school. So she decided that I could go to work. And at that time in Ireland, you could leave school at 14 years of age. So I decided anyway that was fine. I didn't like school. So my mother found a job for me in a hotel in Limerick. And so off I went to start a career as a telephone operator in a big hotel in Limerick. So I had a bit of money and I was able to think I was big cheese in this little town. So then I always in my mind, in my dreams, I wanted to be a nurse. I was kind of sickly as a child, so a nurse seemed like a very prominent position. So I wanted to be a nurse. However, as I hadn't got a high school diploma, I had difficulty, and I met a matron from London. And as I was helping her with some telephoning one day, she said she could help me get into a hospital in England, and my dream would come true. But I went home, told my father and my mother I was going to England, I was going to become a nurse. And my father said, "You're not going to England. If you want to be a nurse, you'll have to do it in Ireland." So that's where the journey began into my career as a nurse. I could not get into nurses training without a high school diploma. However, as you know in Ireland, or maybe you don't know, but politics are very important in Ireland. So if you know people in high places, you can get places. So my mother knew a senator in Ireland, and he kind of worked it for me that I might be accepted in a hospital in Ireland. So off I went to Galway for an interview, and I made it from the first 32 down to the short list of 16. And then the second interview, I got it. And now I'll tell you, I was in the car on the way down to Galway to the regional college hospital to start my training, and my mother was a little weepy. So my father said, "Dry your eyes," he said, "that lady will take one look at a bedpan and she'll be home in a week, and the money will be gone." And I thought, that statement kept me in Galway for 4 years. And he was the proudest man the day I graduated, and they were as proud as punch of me. And then I got a job. I decided that I would do the 4th year, which was, what would you call it, I suppose, a kind of a master's course. And you could take fevers, psychiatry, or midwifery. And I decided to do the midwifery. Nursing in Ireland is nothing like it is today. As a student nurse in Galway, you had very strict rules. You weren't allowed out at night. And so temptation is the thing that makes you do things that you shouldn't do, which I did frequently. And the nuns were fairly hard on me because I had lived a little bit of life working in this hotel. And so I wanted to go to the dances. And when I say dancing, at this stage of my life, it was ballroom dancing. And so ballroom dancing was where you met the boys and you had relationships. And so I had a boyfriend from my hometown who I thought was going to be the end. But then PJ came along.
I was doing a line with Helen's best friend called Mary. And Mary told me one evening it was all over. And Helen's boyfriend was an American, and he went back to America for the summer and left me as a chaperone for Helen. And that was the worst thing he could do, because when he came back, Helen and I were inseparable. And what I liked about Helen is she was a great conversationalist, and she was full of fun, and she was a great dancer, and we had a great time together. We were kindred spirits, and I forgot all about Mary, and that was the end of it.
We became very good friends. Not really lovers, or there was nothing, it was a platonic friendship. But the boyfriend that I had from America would go back to America every summer. And then he was going to bring back the diamonds, and he was going to ask me to marry him, which I knew. In the meantime, PJ and I had decided we belonged together. As part of my midwifery course, I had to get 20 home deliveries. And so I got a few of my deliveries in Dunmore, County Galway, where PJ came from. And PJ very kindly would drive me down there to deliver the baby. And so we became very close. And in 1964, Helen and PJ got married. Sister Imelda was the matron of the hospital. And it was the rule at that time that if by chance something in your life changed, such as engagement, marriage, etc., you had to tell the matron about it. So I got engaged to PJ around New Year's Eve, and I presented myself at the matron's office to tell her. And as I went in, she said, "I suppose you got the diamonds, miss." I said, "I did, sister." And she said, "Of course." She said, "I wouldn't know him." She said, "You have had so many." And I said, "You know him, sister?" And she said, "I do." And I said, "Yes, it's Dr. Gannon." "Oh my God," she said, "why did you do that to that poor man? He's so nice. And why did you have to pick him?" PJ at that point needed to find a residency. That meant that he needed to find a hospital in Ireland where he could do a whole year before he became a specialist. And we travelled the length and breadth of Ireland looking for a residency in psychiatry. And we were not accepted at any hospital. So the next chance he had was to go to a hospital in England, and he applied to Netherton Hospital in Coulson, Surrey, and got the job. So we were then on our way to England, and they provided a house for us, and he would study there for 1 year, and that was wonderful. However, Helen found she was pregnant by the time they arrived in London. And I got a job in Redhill General Hospital in London, outside London, as a nurse midwife. And that's where my older son, Sean, was born. And PJ was coming close to the end of his internship. And we lost our second child. And that was very traumatic for me. And in the meantime, PJ needed to find a fellowship where he could become a consultant, as we call it in Ireland, or a specialist, as we call it in America. So he applied, and he was accepted by the University of Missouri, and he decided to take the job. So we were packing up then to leave for North America. I was terrified. I had never been that far away in my life. I had only been on a plane once, and that was on my honeymoon. So we went back to Ireland for 1 week before we left for North America. I was very, very anxious at that time. So basically when we left Ireland, left Limerick actually, said goodbye to our parents, we came to America, 4 suitcases of what we could carry. I was pregnant, Sean was 3 years old, and we had $50 in cash. That's all we had in the world.
Though my fond love I must leave you, you know my heart is true. It's not the leaving of Limerick that grieves me, but my darling leaving you.
It wasn't what I expected. The slap in the face of 100-degree weather was very hard. Nobody told me that the weather in St. Louis on the 26th of August would burn me to death. I was very, very amazed at the temperature. We didn't have those temperatures in Ireland. So I found the journey very stressful, and there was a doctor to meet us in St. Louis. And to my amazement, we were going to stay in the hospital, and we had a dome on the hospital which became our apartment and in St. Louis, Missouri. However, we got in the taxi and we were looking for the state hospital. Other people shared the taxi with us, and they were going to this very fancy hotel called the Chase Park Plaza. I thought we were at the hospital when we arrived, and I went in and I said, "Are you expecting us? We're the Gannons." Much to my horror, I was miles away from the hospital. So when we got to the hospital, it was a very old psychiatric hospital, and it wasn't what I expected. I was in a little bit of shock, and so we tried to settle down. PJ was welcomed and he started work right away, and things were good for him. I was terrified of staying in that apartment. It was seeing patients, not, being used to a psychiatric hospital, which I hadn't worked in. So PJ thought, well, if we get her some food, comfort food that she likes, maybe that'll help. So we went to the nearest store and we walked, and we took Sean with us. He was tired, he didn't want to walk, so we were going to buy a stroller for him. And that was the day that I met this wonderful woman when I asked her, where could I buy rashers? She had no idea what rashers were. She was fascinated by this woman who was looking for this commodity, and there was no grocery store really near. And she asked me where did I live and where was I from. And I said I lived in the state hospital. And she immediately thought, of course, that I was a patient. So she took us on board as adoptive family, helped us, drove us back to the hospital, and I said, would she find me a flat or a house I didn't want to stay in the hospital any longer. And so she said, I'm going on vacation for 2 weeks and I'll call you when I come back. And she did. And so that woman became like a mother to me. And she took care of me and she taught me how to shop and how to live. And we found a house and we lived in that little house for 4 years. Niall was born in that time, and then we looked for a house, and that's the house that you see me in today. Life became a little better for me. When that 1971 Cultus concert came to St. Louis, thanks to Bill McAvoy, who actually is a legend in the fact that he brought the culture to all of North America through Cultus Cultúr. Bill McAvoy was able to organize the Folk Music Society in St. Louis to host the concert here in 1971. I just heard about it. I was not involved in that planning. Bill McAvoy did everything to bring that concert to St. Louis, thinking that we had a bigger Irish community. But for me, it brought Ireland to me. And so I was in heaven with the Cultus people. They spoke like we spoke. They enjoyed our jokes. We enjoyed having them. And so I became part of the group that brought them back in '72. And so we approached the Folk Music Society. They knew we were Irish. And so we became part of that family of folk musicians who would form a branch of Cultus with the hope that we could bring them back again. There was a great rapport between the folk music people and our family. And so '72 concert was organized. I had the house by then. We were able to host people. They stayed with us. We fed all of them here in the house. Laros O'Murricu, the director of Cultus, was on that tour, and he was very excited. And believe it or not, Seamus de Bruin was on that tour also. And they were very appreciative of our respect for the traditional music. And so we decided that we would be part of that family and grow the branch. And at that time, I intended my children to go back and grow up in Ireland. And so I wanted them to have traditional music. And so I started them on fiddle, and they were doing very well. Now, there was no Irish fiddle teacher. So what did I do? I adopted the Suzuki method so that they would learn by ear, just like we did in Ireland. I knew that the traditional music was listening and learning, and I knew that that was the motto of the Suzuki method. So I initiated finding a Suzuki teacher for my children, and that's how we started. There was a fiddler here in St. Louis at that time, Richard Lavin, who was a very good fiddler, but he didn't want to teach. So we just did the listening and the learning and the basic tunes. And then each year from that, the Cultus people would give us tunes. I grew the branch and got more members, and then we were able to bring teachers out from Ireland to St. Louis. The branch at that time was basically meeting in a bank where they would offer us a room once a month. And we tried to start the Cayley dancing and the music, and we'd have our kids perform, and the audience dutifully would listen and applaud them. And that, of course, is part of my whole theory of training the child, is that reward them for playing and they'll want to do it again and again. As the branch was in its infancy, I realized the value of some of the masters that were on the tour that would come. I mean, to me, they were famous people, like Joe Burke. Having Joe Burke stay in your house and play in your house, to me, that was a big thing. And we had a great relationship with Joe. We had Micheál O'Loughlin. We had Diarmuid O'Cahan, who was a legend in Comhaltas. We had Donncha Muinachán, who was one of my colleagues in dancing. And at that time, I had started doing a little bit of dancing again myself. And if I could say to you at this time also that little did I know, coming from Ireland, that the little bit of dancing that I got, I was never a champion dancer, but little did I know that it would mould my life in such a way, away from home, and that it became so valuable to me. So I often thank my mother, God rest her, for giving me those dancing lessons and for giving me the gift of enjoying traditional music and dancing. I was so excited with these tours and having these people stay in my house. They talked like me, they understood me. Nora Butler to me was God. You know, her traditional singing was something that we hadn't heard in years. We wanted to give that to the kids, but the audience wasn't there for it. We created the audience here for traditional singing, which now our children compete in and go to Ireland, compete in the All-Ireland. So, God rest her soul, Nora gave us a huge gift in singing. And staying in our house was like a big treat for us to have the likes of Nora Butler.
For the blood of the race of O'Connor fills the veins of my buckling down. Soft Kate Millefalcha I'll give him every Sunday when he comes to me. And sure, what can I do but believe him when he whispers a hushla machri?
I remember there was Kate Carney who told stories. There were people that gave us bits that we had forgotten and that we were able to pass on to the kids. And even though our children at that time maybe didn't appreciate it like we did, PJ and I, they learned to appreciate it. And, you know, we were just aching for Comhaltas, if you like. So all this time after the first Comhaltas concert, I had more or less settled, if you like. We had a house. We were open to, I was trying to promote the Céilí dancing, and then the branch was officially incorporated in 1973 as a not-for-profit organization. That's huge in America, because then you can apply for grants, etc. So I was delighted. At that time, I knew I couldn't go back to nursing unless I had reciprocity of my license in Ireland. However, trying to get reciprocity, I was blocked because I didn't have a leaving cert. In the beginning of my story, I told you I did not finish school in Ireland. So I had a challenge again. I could either not go back to nursing, not teach psychoprophylaxis, which I had started to do, not practice midwifery unless I had a high school diploma. So I took the high school diploma here in St. Louis. And that was a good challenge for me at the time, because that was the year in 1975 that we lost our fourth son, Patrick. I was devastated, and that was the same year that PJ did not get the professorship in Galway. So I decided at that time that my life, I needed to be near Patrick, at least for that time. I needed to be near Patrick. And I suppose luckily for me, I was offered the presidency of Irish Arts. I was offered the nomination for the presidency of Irish Arts. And so I decided it would be good for me. I took it on board, and I was motivated because of my children, because of the future I had in St. Louis, and because of the community which encouraged me. That was always very appreciated. The Incarnate Word nuns were awfully good to us when we came, and when they discovered I could dance, they were enamored by the fact that I could dance for them. So I started to teach them a little bit of Cayley dancing, and Peter would play the accordion, and those were happy days for us. The nuns would come out here for Christmas to our home, and so we grew from those very basic get-togethers and grew into offering more than just the neighbours a little bit of dancing. And then I realised I was pregnant again. And even though we were told by a very good colleague of PJ's, a geneticist, that would have been risky, God decided to give me a daughter. And then I got Eileen, and I was in heaven, literally. So I had got my reciprocity. I became a nurse midwife again, and I still have that option today. It's a wonderful career for young people. My granddaughter is now a nursing student in Boston, and I love the fact that it's a lifetime career, just like Irish dancing. And my Irish dancing had become a very significant part of my life. I wasn't involved in the music as much, but I loved it. And so I started bringing kids into the basement and teaching them a few steps in dancing. And PJ would teach them the tin whistle and the mouth organ, and we grew from there. And then there was another dance teacher here in St. Louis who was a Dillin student from the north of Ireland. So she and I combined forces and opened a little school of Irish dancing. Once again, the high school diploma and all the TCRG came against me. They couldn't enter a feis because I didn't have the dancing qualification for the commission in Ireland. Although I could dance, and that was appreciated here in St. Louis, and we had gathered the kids to teach them what I knew and so on and so forth, there was no TCRG in St. Louis. The very first TCRG was Anne Richens, who came in to St. Louis. There was a dance master named Captain Con O'Sullivan, and he was teaching dancing. And he didn't have the TCRG, but he had steps. He loved it. He played the accordion, and it was all St. Louis could offer by way of traditional Irish dancing. So the kids that came and learned their dancing, they loved it, but they couldn't enter a feis because I was not a qualified teacher, and only kids from qualified teachers could enter a feis anywhere in the world. So I decided I would bring a teacher who had the TCRG into St. Louis. So I brought a young lady from Chicago who was a new TCRG into St. Louis, and she would come once a month. I would drill the kids the other days that we would get together, and she was teaching them, and they could enter under her name. That looked like a fairly lucrative business to this young lady, so she decided to open a dance school in St. Louis. So I lost everything. All the kids I was teaching went, of course, and rightly so, to the girl who had the TCRG. And I was then faced with another challenge. So in that time period, I met Maureen Hall, who was traveling around North America teaching different dancing schools, giving them workshops. She would bring Mary Duffy into St. Louis and into other places. And so she said to me, you either become a TCRG or you won't be able to have a dance school. I was 47 years old. That was a huge challenge for me at 47. But thanks to Maureen, she said, stay with it. And she'd come every 6 months and she'd see how hard I had worked on the material. She'd drive away and say, I'll be back in 6 months. It took me a lot of effort to do that. And I finally went to Los Angeles and passed the TCRG at the age of 47. And it was magic from there on. So every child then that came to our school was given a penny whistle or a tin whistle. So Coltus provided tin whistles. Everybody started on a tin whistle. As we grew with the Coltus concert tour every year, we wanted to add more instruments, more opportunities for the children. And in 1977, our Queen of the Harp was born, Eileen Gannon. And so I decided then I wanted a harp. I was enamored by Maureen Icossi, her playing, her genius at playing the Irish harp. Maureen Icossi happened to be a house guest during the Coltus tour, and I fell in love with her, and I decided that my daughter would play the harp.
Some of my earliest memories with my mom are getting picked up from school and jumping in the car and heading off to a nursing home or a school or a concert hall. We were always heading off to do a performance somewhere. Even my earliest memory as a probably 2 or 3 year old was just holding her hand and dancing in some place that I can't remember, but it was burned into my memory, and that was what we were just always doing, always playing, singing, dancing, going to a music lesson, something. And I am really grateful that that was such a big part of my life. And I'm grateful that she chose the harp for me, because it has opened up countless doors, and I love it very much now, even though there might have been a bit of pushing involved in the early years to get me to practice, but I'm so grateful that I was given that opportunity.
So I wanted a harp. I think Maura gave the first few notes to Eileen, and she went on from there to become a world champion on harp, and is now the continuity of Helen, if you like. She's the harp teacher, she's the boss in the school, and as I learned to sit back and enjoy my continuity, it's all very magic, and perhaps all thanks to Comhaltas. How lucky we were to have gotten the gift of Comhaltas. I became very involved with Comhaltas from there on. My life changed. I was able to teach dancing. I was able to teach beginner whistle. As we trained the kids, my 3 sons were the very first 3 to enter a qualifying flageolet in the Midwest, and they got first, second, and third. I thought I was big cheese, and I thought my kids were big cheese. And the following year, I remember there was Tommy Ryan's grandson beat one of them, but Niall had an edge on the other 2. And by the time he was 11, took him to Listowel. Thought, he's ready for the All-Ireland. Well, the child arrived in Ireland with 2 tunes. And he called me up and he said, "Ma'am, will you bring me home?" He said, "They're calling me the Yank with 2 tunes." And I remember telling him, "Learn 2 more and I'll bring you home." And he went on to become a wonderful fiddler. And there again is a lovely Comhaltas story. He knew 2 tunes, and he was probably the only one in St. Louis that was learning Irish music. He was Suzuki trained, and by the time that child was 15 years old, he was teaching for me. He was teaching others. So as the clock goes around, it passes on to somebody else. And so I found the magic of it. Maureen introduced me to several of the famous dance teachers, Mary Duffy being one of them. Mary Duffy was one of the most looked up teachers in Irish dancing in the world. She was from Dublin. She was a champion. She was one of the Milady dancers. Matt Milady, who went before her, was one of those famous dancers. And so she was introduced to America through Maureen Hall and came to St. Louis, gave a workshop for me several years in a row.
Hi Helen, Mary Duffy Pask here. I hear you're having celebrations soon and just want to wish you the best of luck in your retirement. Congratulate you on all you have done for our Irish culture, be it dancing, music, language. You've done it all, Helen, and we are all very proud of you. And personally, I want to thank you for all the times I had my visits with you to do the workshops. You always looked after me really well. The class and pupils were excellent. They worked really hard, and it was a very joyous time. And also with the paperwork for going into America and my visa and all of that. That's all down to you. Thank you so much, and I'm wishing you great further health and happiness for many years to come. Grimila Mila Mahagat.
The Coltus tour would have very famous dancers that helped me on my journey. One particular year, we had a young man who was extraordinary at dancing. He was excellent. And I, not knowing at the time, had the gift of housing this young man. So down in my basement, he actually gave me some steps. I was enamored by this young man, and it was none other than the world famous Michael Flatley. A lovely young man who would spend his time practicing. He brought Irish dancing to a very high profile here in North America because Riverdance became so famous, and he was involved in creating Lord of the Dance. So I was lucky enough to have that young man in my house, sleeping in my house, teaching me in my basement. What more could I ask?
Hi, Helen, it's Michael Flatley here. Just wanted to congratulate you. I hear that you're celebrating your 50th anniversary in the business. Thank you for all the wonderful things that you've done for Irish kids, Irish people, musicians, dancers all over the world, and how you've helped so many people and given to everybody that's in your life. I remember staying at your beautiful home there in St. Louis many years ago, and I'll never forget how kind you were to me and how caring, and you looked after me so well. You know, my father was always such a huge fan of yours, Helen. You could do no wrong, and you're a great person. You know, my father has a very good judge of character. So listen, God bless you. Congratulations again. Keep up the good work. Sending all my love and kisses. God bless you now.
I'd like to tell you a little bit more about the growth of Coltus and my branch, St. Louis Irish Arts. I was so enamored by the concert tour that my motivation was a very high level, and there were 10 other people who were just as motivated as I, many of them who are now no longer with us, but we must always remember where we got our beginning. And so I wanted the Coltus tour to come back because they were the leaders, they were the people who could help me, they were the people who could inspire not just me but the community. So I got interested in finding sponsorship to bring the Coltus tour back. We were far removed from the big cities where the Coltus tour would naturally come every year. So I went to Anheuser-Busch, and there were two great people there, Dennis Long and Mike Rorty, who believed in the culture, who believed in what it could do for the community. And so they gave me sponsorship for the concert tours. And from that, the concert tour was a given every year. And it grew and grew.
Our sponsors, without whom we would not be able to come at all. Ladies and gentlemen, will you show your appreciation for our great sponsors, Budweiser, be right here in St. Louis. Budweiser, thank you. Thank you. Focus Culturally and Dublin, it gives me great pleasure to present you this token and appreciation for all the work that you have done. God bless you.
It took two great organisations to take care of that for us. And locally, that was the Regional Arts Commission, who has sponsored this programme for the last 17 years. And Budweiser, who took it upon themselves, not just locally, but internationally, to sponsor this programme for the last 7 years. So would you please give a round of applause to those two great sponsors.
And I knew that the music was very important in the whole picture of the branch of Cultus. So we got PJ, my husband, set up down here in the basement, and we had our first tin whistle class, and off we went. And so we became very involved in growing the school, which is now known as St. Louis Irish Arts. And I believe it's one of the biggest branches in North America today. So I knew the theory from Dr. Suzuki that if I stuck with the tin whistle, they could eventually grow into other instruments. So we started out with the famous worldwide national anthem, Twinkle, Twinkle, Little Star. And so we grew from there. And then I had too many kids here in the house. And so I started to shop for somewhere to teach. And at that time, there was a closed school about 2 miles from the house, and it was a community centre. And I went in there and asked them if I could teach there. And I had many, many years of success there. It was not expensive to rent the auditorium. And so my son Niall was growing by then, and he started to teach the fiddle. My husband started to teach the mouth organ, the whistle, the accordion, and the singing.
I had won the All-Ireland on harmonica one year, and everybody thought they would like to play Irish music, but the harmonica is very hard, so I decided that to be much better if they started with the tin whistle. So they brought the tin whistles and the key of that, a D or G, I forget which one, but they were all in tune. And we used to charge $1 admission, and for that $1 they would get an hour lesson, and they would get tea and cakes, and they were very happy with that. And from that on, I started teaching harmonica. I'm not a tin whistler, but I had a class of pupils who wanted to learn that mouth organ. So at the present time, I am teaching the mouth organ, and I have one girl in the 12 to 15 who's going to compete in the All-Ireland competition in mouth organ in August of this year. And she is one. My dream was to teach a child to be as good or even better than myself. And she is certainly as good and probably would be better than me eventually.
We were well on our way at that stage, and that lasted until about 2001, when again they decided to repossess that location and turn it back into a public school, and so I was homeless again. Then I heard about this parish that was closing, that had an empty school, and the La Salette fathers were running it, and I went to the priest and I asked him, could I teach there? And that's where we are today. And so we have grown now into 100 strong students and also All-Ireland champions. I also realised that taking the kids back to Ireland to the Masters was like the icing on the cake.
In the beginning, we brought Eileen to Tracy Fleming's house in Ireland, and I got the idea, instead of we going to Ireland, why not bring Tracy back to St. Louis, and she could teach a lot of kids, and that's what happened. So Tracy was a wonderful person and a wonderful teacher and a wonderful harpist, and because of her, Eileen won the All-Ireland in the harp competition.
It had to be done to share the culture, the whole culture with them. And so we motivated the kids that if they qualified for the Fleadh and Scoilgeachta was in my mind at the time, to grow them. And so anyone who qualified, and we were literally the first ones to enter a Fleadh in Chicago. That was where the first qualifying Fleadh for North America was held. And Diarmuid O'Cahan and lots of people came out from Ireland to adjudicate. And so they were struggling at that time to have a building, and they were in the same process that we were in. And so we took our first tour to Ireland with the Group of Ceol, and there were 5 kids in the Group of Ceol. It was pure magic, and they held their own, but we also saw that we were light years away from winning a Fleadh, winning Fleadh na hÉireann. So we set about growing even more musicians, and then we pulled it off in 2004. We won the All-Ireland Fleadh. From there on, the kids were motivated, and they went to Scoilgeachta, they met the Masters. They came home motivated as much as I was, and part of them getting the trip was that they would transfer what they learned at Scoilgeachta to the next group down.
I would take Liam and Niall, I think, to Ireland, and of course they were laughed at by the others because they had no Irish music at all. But Niall in particular was very fast learning the Irish music, and he was a pupil of Paddy Ryan, and Paddy was a great teacher for beginners, and Niall is a great fiddler now, and he is also a great drummer. And he has a set of electronic drums which take very little space, and he is very good at those. And Liam would prefer practicing medicine in the emergency room than playing the fiddle or the tin whistle or the harmonica, because he's a very good doctor, but he's not a very good musician.
Meanwhile, while I was struggling to grow St. Louis Irish Arts, the branch, I was lucky enough to be elected the regional chair of the Midwest. That was a step up, and it was a chance for me to make some investment in Comhaltas. And from there I went on to become the PRO of Comhaltas North America. While that didn't put me on the standing committee, it gave me a chance to find out things and to publicize the events of Comhaltas. And then in 2004, I was elected the First Lady Provincial Chair of Comhaltas North America. That was huge for me. It gave me something to strive for, and a goal. And so I became very involved. I travelled to all of the regional meetings during my term. I elected my own secretary here, Sue Spellman, who was wonderful. And so from there, I felt very much a part of Worldwide Comhaltas. In the meantime, we were still travelling to Ireland alternate years for Fleadh na hÉireann, Scoileachta, and every year we had Sean Walsh from Skibbereen come from Ireland and direct our summer camp. A young lady here called Barbara Bushy, who is now the secretary of our Mehel program, is a cousin of Sean Walsh. So in her summer vacations in Skibbereen, she happened to go to Sean's session. And Sean reminded her that there was indeed a branch in her hometown, St. Louis. So when Barbara came back to St. Louis, she called me and asked me if I would help her to bring his little school in Skibbereen to St. Louis as a cultural exchange. And so that's where the twinning began. And we had 20 of Sean Walsh's students come to St. Louis with their chaperones, and we had a wonderful summer camp here in St. Louis.
Hi, my name is Sean Walsh, and I'm here in Skibbereen in West Cork, down the very southwest of Ireland, in the O'Donnell Ross Memorial Garden. And our branch here in Skibbereen is twinned with St. Louis Irish Arts since the year 2007. And that twinning came about when my cousin Barbara Walsh-Bushy and her husband Bill from St. Louis visited us here in Skibbereen. And they came and saw our group perform at a session show in the West Cork Hotel. And they thought it would be wonderful if our group could come to St. Louis and perform over there as well. So when they returned, Barbara got in contact with Helen Gannon in St. Louis Irish Arts, and she inquired if our group could come to visit St. Louis. And Helen didn't know who we were, or she didn't know anything about us, but being the visionary that she is, she took a chance on us. On the occasion of the 2010 visit, we recorded a joint CD together, St. Louis Irish Arts and Skibbereen Comhaltas, The Magic of Twinning. And I was also personally delighted that Helen Gannon invited me to come and tutor at her annual summer workshops every summer since 2007. It's been a wonderful privilege for me to work with so many wonderful young musicians in St. Louis and watch them develop into such wonderful, talented musicians who are now all making their mark on the music scene in St. Louis and wider in North America. Both our branches are extremely grateful to Barbara and Bill Bushy for the support they have given to this twinning programme since its foundation back in the year 2006, and we are very grateful to them. Finally, on behalf of the branch here in Skibbereen, I would like to extend our best wishes to Helen Gannon and all in St. Louis Irish Arts, and we look forward to welcoming you back here to Skibbereen and to Ireland sometime in the very near future.
It was much more than just learning music. It was being with somebody from Ireland, learning about the culture of Ireland, the food, the music, the dance, the money. Everything was a surprise to them. And so they then invited St. Louis Irish Arts to visit Skibbereen. We are now in our 12th year of twinning, and we are very happy with the opportunities that provides for our students. It's a magic happening for them, and they strive to get better, to be part of the group that's invited to Skibbereen. As I finished my role as the chair of the province of North America, I was elected as chair of a brand new program called Mehel North America. Mehel is an Irish word, of course, meaning collectively helping each other, and the Department of Foreign Affairs in Ireland provided funding to the world, to England, to Ireland, to North America, and indeed to other countries, to help them, to initiate new programs, to help the 40 million Irish Americans here to be able to connect with their culture. We forget about how many Irish came to North America and who would love that connection. As part of the Ard Comhairle, that is the governing body of Comhaltas Ceoltóirí Éireann, and there are only 31 people on that committee, which keeps the rules and keeps all of the functions of Comhaltas running. Each one of us would have responsibility. I have responsibility for the Coiste Rinca, which is the dancing part of Comhaltas. After so many years of growing St. Louis Irish Arts from the bottom up, I would really like to turn over the gavel to my daughter Eileen.
My mom has created quite the legacy with St. Louis Irish Arts, almost 50 years now, which is an amazing feat, and she has grown it from absolutely nothing and reached so many people with her outreach of performances and teaching and you name it. I have some very big shoes to fill when I step into hers, but I certainly hope that she sticks around and helps me out because she has a lot of strong suits that I can only hope to have as strong by the time I am 80 years old.
I could not have done what I did without my dream team. No one person can grow something like what we have today in St. Louis Irish Arts without genius help. I was lucky. I had my secretary, Kathy Thompson, my vice chair, Pam Zykin, our treasurer, Lee Smolensky, our PRO was Matt Hathaway. But along with those people, there were many, many on the dream team who helped us grow the branch. They were happy to do it. Their interest in it was to see the youth of St. Louis, the Irish youth, and keep in mind that 40 million Irish Americans have background in Ireland, and so we offer them anything in the way of demonstrations, performances, lessons. We do cooking lessons. We teach them to knit, to sew. So our legacy is very wide. It will be interesting to see what the next chapter of St. Louis Irish Arts becomes. I have no reservation in thinking anything but positive. I am very proud of what we've achieved so far, and I'm very happy to see the younger generation taking over. And now they're actually going to be very lucky because we have a forever home in the works to be renovated. And so 2022, which is our 50th anniversary, will be a big year for us, and we will hopefully have great things happening. While I hope to be around for a good few years still, I'm looking forward to seeing what becomes of Irish arts in the next generation. I certainly was very fortunate that Comhaltas came into my life. I cannot even imagine that I would have ever settled down if that first concert tour in 1971 hadn't come into St. Louis. I may have been the only person that it meant so much to, but it certainly was the motivation for me to have something of Ireland to grow and become one of the best branches in North America. So I'm terribly grateful to all of those. My friends are worldwide now. If we had gone back to Ireland, not having Comhaltas in our lives, we wouldn't know anybody. But now we have friends in every corner of the world. I have friends in South America, friends in Japan. I mean, it's pure magic what has happened with the Comhaltas movement. And so I am, while I hate to say I'm going to be stepping away for a while, I'm going to be around and obviously trying to inject some of what I love into the future of Comhaltas. Gur míle maith agat agus slán agat.
Well, I was thinking about my earliest memories of my mom, and the main thing that came to mind was growing up without really knowing whether I was Irish or American. I was 3 years old when we came to America, and we went back to Ireland every summer, and I learned Irish music and I did Irish dance, and I went to school in America, and the two worlds were sort of blended together in my memory. And with my mother, she wanted it to be that way. She didn't want us to be one or the other. And to be fair, it wasn't clear, I think, to her whether we were going to stay here or not in the United States. So I remember it made me more proud of America and more proud of Ireland because of growing up with the two experiences together, commingled and learning the cultures of both. So I'm very appreciative of that, and I think it took a great deal of effort and resources on the part of my parents to enable that and to give us that opportunity.
So as I think about my mom and her life and her faith and her passion, I wonder, for me, what was it that had her put a fiddle into my hands at the age of 5 and say, this is going to be your thing. Soccer's not going to work out. All those things that the other kids are doing, this is going to be your thing, and this is going to take you places. And how perhaps she knew that those words were true, but she couldn't have known that that was going to lead to a 30-year career, which I'm still in today, because I was teaching a young girl the fiddle. She's done that for thousands of other kids. Her faith has transferred to my brother, and there's now a clinic in Africa and a school in Africa. And I look at musicians who've obviously come out of St. Louis Irish Arts, and that has sprung not only from Irish musicians, but indie rock musicians, jazz violinists, professed sisters who are in the convent. So I'm just grateful that Mom had that vision to stay focused and to know that music would open doors, and that for all of us who participated in the branch and in Cultus, that would allow all of these people, thousands of people, to go to Ireland and to not feel like strangers.
When I think of my mom, in terms of what she has given to me, I would say one of the biggest gifts is just a gift of passion. We've taught our own kids, our catchphrase is Gannon's never quit. I got that from my mom. When things are difficult, but you're pursuing something that's important and is your passion, you keep trudging on until you achieve your goal. When I said to my mom, would you like to go to Kenya with me to see a project I'm working on? Instantly, yes. When she got there, she fell in love with something that was clearly moving to her and embraced it full tilt right out of the gate, no questions asked. So that gift will be passed on from me to my kids, to their kids, just that type of passionate commitment to what we find important in life, and she's done that.
My mom, through St. Louis Irish Arts and all of our travels and sharing our talents with the world and everyone in St. Louis, has in a way sort of created an Irish culture bubble in St. Louis, in that you wouldn't take 3 degrees of separation to find someone in St. Louis who knows my mom. She's had such a wide reach that everyone knows her, which is kind of the same thing that happens when Irish people go abroad on holidays. It doesn't take them long to find someone who knows one of their relatives, or it's the very same kind of thing that my mom has created here, which I think is pretty beautiful. Makes it feel very authentic.
What I am most proud of Helen is, number one, she's my wife, and we never argue. At least maybe once or twice a year we have an argument, but that lasts for about 5 minutes. But what I admire most is whatever she decides to do is done 110%. And she is wonderful at bringing a group together and being members of a cultist team. And she treats them very well, and they don't leave her. They don't want to leave the group at all because they have a good time, and they feel with Helen at the helm, they are not wasting their time. In fact, they're doing very well.
We are the music makers, and we are the dreamers of dreams, wandering by lone sea breakers and sitting by desolate streets. World losers and world forsakers, on whom the pale moon beams. Yet we are the movers and shakers of the world forever.